right, so again, we'll go through chapter 10 now. We'll go through chapter 11, which is on navigation and a few other things, site maps, etc. On Thursday, we should be able to do that in about an hour, but on Thursday it'll be my responsibility to have your next assignment. Do you want hard copies? Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll just, because there's only about 10 of you, so I'll print off hard copies and I'll have them available for you. Plus it'll be online, both, you know, on P Drive and on Blackboard, and it'll be in both PDF and Word formats. All right, so chapter 10 is on themes, and as it says it's best practice to separate. Well, you know this. They talk about separating formatting from content. All right, one way you do that is with CSS. All right, but it says to make this work even better, ASP.NET provides a feature that's called themes, which works with CSS, allowing you to create multiple themes for a site. Hopefully you saw this when we talked about this in an earlier chapter. There's one theme, and there's another theme. So it's the same page, but basically the CSS that we're applying to it, the images, etc., are different between them. So what we have here is, notice that's the theme, the master page content label area for one, and that's the one for the other one. All right, this is the same. It's just that the way that it's done with CSS is different. All right, so that's what they're talking about in here. You can do all this stuff if you want to. You can do it all without using themes, just so you know. Everything they talk about in this chapter, you can do it without themes. But then it's a lot more work because you're constantly going in with CSS, and you may or may not remember this, but when we go through and look at this stuff, so for instance, if I bring up the cart page, all right, and I bring it up in design mode, and I start looking at this stuff. So if I click on the remove button, for example, I don't know why it's not giving me anything down here in the properties. That's what I want. But it's not showing me anything. Well, that's what I wanted to show you. Is there's a feature in all of the different things that you go and you put on a page. There it is. That's called Css Class. All right. And what that says is, oh, this is class button. Well, by default, there's no class provided. All right, there's none. But if I come up into here and I look, hopefully you'll notice when we look up here, we have a new folder that's called App Themes. And if I click in there, notice there's bats and there's spiders. And what's underneath there? There's the image that we had for bats. So what is that? Well, that's the banner. And when you look at it, okay, that's the one that we have been using. Okay, that's just a question mark, so we don't even need that, but I can close both these. But what I'm trying to show you is, if I bring up the other one, because that's what we've been using, that's spiders, and we look at the images for spiders, you can see how the banner changes. Okay, and that's all they're talking about, is just different ways that you can go in and you can look at the system. All right, one of the things to notice is if we go into web config now, all right, I thought it was web config, but let's see. There, pages. All right, so it's saying by default, I want the page that comes up to be the page with bats. But if I change that from bats to spiders, then it would, instead of showing as bats, it would show spiders. Okay, and basically when I'm popping back and forth between themes, that's what I'm doing, is I'm changing this setting, the page's theme setting in here. Okay, so that's, again, that in a nutshell, that's what this chapter is about. So they show you again in the figure on the next page, as it says, the order page with two different themes applied to it. All right, so even though it works the same with both themes, the versions can look quite different. Okay, maybe I have some really spooky thing for the week of Halloween, you know, that's different that I want to do, and I could do that as an example. All right, and I agree with pretty much with what the author says. Themes are relatively easy to create, better than. Yet it says you can switch from one theme to the other by just changing that setting that I just showed you. All right, that's all you got to do. Question? You should be able to change it programmatically. You could even have a drop down. All right, and you could have a drop down. You could ask them what theme they wanted, and then I don't know if that's exactly what you mean, but that's probably, I mean, yes, you can do that. All right, so a little bit more then, starting on page 326 for how they work. As it says, when we look at the Solution Explorer, notice what's in each one of these. All right, notice that each one of them has an images folder. That's different than this images folder. Those in the images folder that you see where my mouse is right there, that's stuff common to every page. That's all of your products. But the stuff that's in the images folder under BATS is the stuff that's just for the BATS theme. The stuff that's in the images folder for spiders is just the images for the spiders theme. Does that make sense? All right. And hopefully that, you understand that. And then notice that each one of them has both their own CSS file, which we've looked at, but it also has their own what's called a skin file that we're going to get into in this chapter. All right. And even though it might sound a little bit, well, that sounds a little hard or whatever, I mean, look at this. Okay, we've been using BATS, so let's just go into BATS. All right, so here's bats.css. There's nothing in there you don't understand, and that's all of it. It's not like it's a big file. All right, if we go into the bats.skin, what is this? What it's doing is it's saying, okay, what I want to be able to do is every time I've got a required field validator, I want the class that's associated with it to be the validator class. And for a required field and a range and a custom and a regular expression, would you agree all of them are validator? All right, well, what's the advantage of doing that? Well, I can come back in here and now I can say I want all of them to be bolded in a shade of red. That makes sense? And again, that's what the whole chapter gets into. And you can put anything in here that you want to create. Not only that, you can take individual ones. So if I wanted a individual button to look different, I could have it have its own skin if I wanted to do that. And then just apply that skin. All right. So as it says, the folders and files, one or more CSS files, one or more skin files, one or more images. Now, you may or may not have noticed this, but when we come back over here, let me go back to, I want to bring up the regular page again. Let me close some of this stuff. I'll just bring up bring up the order page. Okay. All right. Now, what was I going to tell you about this? Oh, so it actually wouldn't matter what page I bring up, to be honest with you, but that's fine. I'll bring up the order page. And when I come in here, if I go up into here and I right mouse click on the name of the project and I choose add, well, what I want you to understand is one of the folders that's under there, that's your theme folder. All right. Actually it's app themes, and it's not showing right now because we already have one. But when you do this, when you create a brand new project, and you go over to, you right mouse click on the project name and you go to add, and then you go to add ASP.NET folder. One of the ones that will be in here, if you haven't added it yet, will be app themes. You'll have to add that. It's not automatically given as part of a project. Yeah. Themes, I believe that app themes you can put inside of app themes. And I think they can even run on their own. So if you wanted a theme that wasn't part of that, if you wanted to do something special, you'd be able to do that also. All right. Don't quote me on that, but I think what I just told you is all correct. All right. So again, the app themes is the subfolders that define the themes. The skin files within define the skins for the appearance of all those controls, and the CSS. The other thing too is really, the book doesn't say this, but so this is me speaking. You may read the chapter and the author may disagree with what I'm about to say. By and large, the stuff you put in a skin file, that's to affect your ASP.NET controls. All right, and you associate them with a CSS class. The regular CSS is for both. You can apply regular CSS for both server controls and client controls. And as it says, in general, you use the styles in the styles folder. So the one out here that styles, that one. The author says you'll typically use that particular one, all right, to do basic formatting for master and content pages. But anything special that you want to do, you'll typically put them in skins and you'll put them in the app themes. All right. The difference between customization and styles themes on page 328 here. The author says when you work with themes, you should realize ASP.NET provides two different types of themes, but they're created in the same way. All right. It says the difference between these is how they're applied. If, for example, you use the theme attribute on the pages element in web.config, that applies the theme to every page on the site. Did you hear that? All right. That says, again, that if I come in here, as we just looked at, so if we come in here and I go down to web.config, and if right now, if web.config says bats, and I change that, well, you'll see it. Let's run it first. I might try to run the web.config page because of where I am, so I might get an error here. Yeah, that's why I got the error. All right. So if I come back up, I've got to run it from one of the order.aspx. That'll be fine. Okay, so if I run it from here, you've already seen this. Hopefully you've already seen this. There's bats. Okay? So if I come through there and take what we just did, stop the run, go down to my web.config file, and I change that to spiders. All right? I save. I didn't even have to save. If I run this again with the order page. So if I bring it up again here, that should be pretty obvious what just happened. All right, so that is a way to do that. And as John said, yes, I think you can go in and do that programmatically also. There's actually a file that we don't get much into in here that's called global.ascx, and I think you can even go in there and do programmatic things in there. So you could check, for instance, again, if I wanted the week of Halloween that theme to be, I could go and check, and if the number of days to Halloween was 7 or less, I could just change the attribute. All right. I mean, you saw it wasn't hard to do, but you wouldn't expect an end user to do something like that. Okay. So what the author is saying is what we just did, if we applied it to all pages, so it's a customization thing. But what ends up happening is I can sit there and on an individual page I can set a theme too. If I do that, then it becomes a style sheet theme, which means don't run it on every page, just have that special theme on this page. So you can customize it site-wide or you can customize it page-wide. The only thing to remember is if I have 6 pages and I have 6 different themes, that might be one butt-ugly website. All right, and I know that, for example, the project rather that Zane is working on, that she said she basically wants it to look the same, you know, on every single page, and that's what most people want. Right. So they show here how you can apply it, and the difference is, all right, it's pages theme equal and it's style sheet theme. Okay, so all right. So a little bit more in here on themes and skins as far as how to create them, and let's just take a look at the actual code. Now, notice what the author says in here. There's a big difference between this one and this one. All right? This one, I think you all agree, you can see it in the gray there. The one that's here does not have a skin ID associated with it, right? This one doesn't. This means, by default, apply that to every single button that has a CSS class set to button will be this. So again, if we go back and look at this, and we go back and actually look in here, and let's just go to the bats, wrong one, bats.css. All right, does that have a button? That means that every button will look like this. Does that make sense? But if I decide that what I want to do is I want a certain button, maybe I want it to be black, and maybe it glows in the dark or something like that. You know, that would probably even better. All right, type of thing. I mean, that might take a lot of work, or I might be able to just grab a plug-in or something that has that for me. So if I want to do that, then what I have to do is I have to literally name the skin. That's what we're doing. All right. That means that any button that I give a CSS class a fancy button to will have that. So if I have 5 different buttons, and out of those 5 I apply fancy button class to 2 of them, it will have that. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. And here's another one. It's another name skin, but it's for an image button control. Here, as it says, is here's a control that uses a default skin. What does that mean? You don't have to say skin ID. Here's one that uses a name skin, so you have to say skin ID. Again, not to be funny, but it all goes back to the program is only as smart as the code that you give it or don't give it. It'll do whatever you tell it to do, but it won't do what you don't tell it to do. All right, my mantra has changed over time, and this semester it's the answer's in the code all the time. I mean, I couldn't figure out this thing on Joe's the other day, and I just kept looking at it. I knew right where it was, but I did what I told you to do. I walked away. In fact, I walked away for that night. I came back to it the next day, and it sure made a hell of a lot more sense. All right, so first they talk about the skin and the stuff for the bat theme, and really that's one they go into. They don't go over the spider one in here. But as they mentioned, it says to give you a better idea, figure 10.5 presents the skin and the CSS files. This is the ones we've been looking at. All right, so there's the bat skin, and there's the bat CSS. You don't have to have a couple things. You don't have to have just one skin file. You can have as many skin files as you want. What some people end up doing is they take each one of these things and they put them in their own skin file, their own separate files. The advantage of doing that is just the fact that everything's broken up. The disadvantage is if you're changing a lot of stuff, you got to open up a lot of files. All right. So the other thing too is the name of the theme is bats and the name of the skin file is bats. You don't have to name it that. You can name it anything you want. All right, it's just a file that you're creating that's a skins file. So again, when I come through here, all right, and I come in here again, and I'm in here in the spiders folder. If I right mouse click and choose add and choose add new item, one of the things that's in here someplace, there's a skin file. So you add it just like you do any other one. So they since it was in bats, they made it bats, but you don't have to make it that. And I could have bats and bats 2, etc. That'd be a little overkill, but you can do that too if you want to. All right, so just a couple things. Again, the CSS file, as it says, shows how these skins are formatted by the rule for buttons and the validators and that entry class. The styles, as it says, talk to you about how you want the div element done. And the last one in there is the message for the footer. So again, you might decide that you wanted some kind of a special thing in there for the footer that the day before or on Halloween, you might want that text to be bigger than it currently is. All right, you might want it again to glow or do whatever. Okay. As it says, if you apply the bats theme as a custom theme, it overrides the styles in the CSS in the styles folder. All right, it says that's how easy it is to customize the look. It's what I showed you before by just literally changing that one line in the web.config file. As far as applying the themes and skins here, this is on 334. Not much more left in this chapter. As it says, when you use a theme, you can apply the theme to the entire app or to selected pages. You can also apply a skin to individual controls. That's shown here. So again, notice under the for all pages, that's what I just showed you. But if you do this, you can override it. So I should be able to, as an example, all right, I should be able to come back in here. I'm going to cancel this. But I'm going to go over to, what do we have the theme set to right now in web.config? All right, it's set to spiders. Okay, I'm going to go to the order page. And in the order page right here, all right, I want to make sure that I do it exactly the way they show it in the book here. All right, I should be able to come in here and put that theme equals. Oops, I don't know why I keep doing that, but I do. So I should be able to come up here, and right where I am right there, I should be able to say theme equals and choose bats. All right, I think the other one, like we said, was spiders. And that's in the order. So I'll bring up the cart page to start with, and I'll run it from the cart page. And they should be bats, unless I screwed something up, or maybe I did. All right. Well, the home page is still okay. cart page is there. These two must, I don't know if I reset them or what, but you see, understand? I would find that very confusing myself to go back and forth between themes in the same site. There may be a very valid reason for doing so. Or you might have an error page, and that error page might have a totally different theme to it. That makes a lot of sense to do that. But typically something like I just showed you right here, you wouldn't want to do. Did you also notice with the fancy button, did you notice how the buttons look different? All right. So if I go back to here, they don't anymore. Okay. But you now know if you want to do this, I mean, you even know how you can use things like border radius on buttons to make them rounded if you wanted to try doing something like that. Okay. So again, to apply a theme, you can edit the web config file, which is what I showed you. To apply a theme to a single page at design time, you can use the theme or the style sheet attribute. Tried showing you that also. To apply a skin to a control, you use the skin ID, period. If there is no skin ID and you've only got one set up, that's the default skin. If you set up no skin whatsoever, there is a default skin that gets set up for you basically, and it's both ASP.NET dependent and browser dependent. All right, the buttons will look a little bit different in Firefox as opposed to Chrome, etc., but that's all browser dependent stuff. Finally, if you want to add themes, it would make sense to know how to remove them, so that's on 336 and 337, and as the author says here, you can remove a page from an entire application, from a page, or from a control after you've applied it. As it says, although it's not shown in this chapter, the administrator can set a global theme that applies to all web apps running on the server. In that case, you may want to remove the global theme from your pages, all right, or maybe while you were testing or whatever. It says to do that, you can open the web.config file and either set the theme like I showed you or the style sheet theme, which we didn't look at. All right, if you set it to the empty string, it's saying apply nothing to it. All right. So it says next, the figure shows how to remove a theme from just a single page. It says you might want to do that if you want to apply formatting for that page that's different. Again, the example I gave you before, like maybe doing something for an error page. All right. It says it also shows how to remove or disable the theme that's applied to a particular control. All right. So let's look at those. Coming into your web.config file and putting that in, that turns off. So now there's no theme whatsoever. All right. Again, real simply, just coming in here, stopping the run. All right, and coming into web.config. And saying theme equals. All right, I don't want any theme. And then coming back into the cart again and running. Now, if it doesn't look, well, I guess it looks okay. So there's home. Okay, but there's no real theme applied to it. Now, if it looks like it is, and you go, well, there's that there. Well, notice the other pages. All right, there's no theme applied to them. All right, I think that the home page is a little bit different, but you can turn that off too if you want to. I don't know why you'd want to, because then you've got no formatting on it whatsoever. All right. So that's using the pages theme. You can do it for a page by setting it or turning it off. You can do it at runtime. I know you'd asked about that, so you can put it in there also. Notice when they do it in pre-init. And I believe pre-init runs before the form is loaded. You wouldn't want to do it after it's been loaded because then the theme has already been set. All right. So you want to make sure that this is one of those things, if you want to change it programmatically, you change it and put it in the right place. All right. As it says, for a control, okay, as it says here, enable theming equal false. So that would turn it off that theming. All right, and again, you can also do it in code. That was it. This, like I said, this is a very short chapter. That's why I thought we'd be able to do it. So again, themes consist of CSS files, skins, and images, and whatever else you might require. That's most of it. If an app has 2 or more themes, you can adjust it back and forth via the web.config file. All right. Customization themes, you know, we talked about those. Again, developed in the same way, but they're applied a little bit differently, so you can apply them per page, per site, per whatever you want. All right. Skin is, again, the appearance of a server control. Skin works in conjunction with CSS, with the CSS class. All right. And again, if you apply no skins, the default skin is given. If you've got name skins, all right, that we already saw, you need the skin ID property. Okay. So again, you can apply this stuff to all pages, to individual pages, and as it says, when you're working with the individual controls, you can apply it to all controls or just individual controls. All right. So when you come in here now on Thursday, we're going to go over chapter 11, a little longer chapter. It'll take a good hour to get through that. All right. And it's on site navigation and ASP.NET routing. And you'll learn some XML if you've never seen any before. All right. So last thing I'll tell you real quick, I mentioned this before, that, stop the run here. What I've done, I don't know if this helps you or doesn't help you, but if you decide you want to go back and look at any of this stuff yourselves, in the folder with today's date on it, and I'm going to throw that literally right now out on the P drive, there's the chapter 9 and the chapter 10 program. So you don't have to dig through all the stuff that's out there on the system. All right. I'd strongly suggest that before you start the next assignment, you at least have a look at that. Make sure that the way you think stuff works is the way stuff works. The next assignment, I think, is probably easier than the one you're doing now. You get to develop a form, but you do things like put validation controls on it, which you've already been doing. All right, but you do some theming on it. It's very minimal, the amount. In fact, just so you know, the theming that they ask you to do, if I remember correctly, it's really ugly. So if you decide you'd rather put your own theming in, I want you to do some. But if you don't like the CSS that's being used with colors or fonts or whatever, you want to use your own. I don't care. I don't ever care if you do stuff like that. So again, I'm going to grab that. Copy, put that on the P drive for the class. So that's out there now, and I will also take it and zip it and throw it out into Blackboard momentarily. All right, so that's all that I had.